So we will now move on to our third presenters of the session, to Dr. David Kalevsky and colleagues Katina Michael, Roba Abbas, and Mark Freeman. So over to you, David.
Good afternoon, everyone. My colleagues and I are pleased to showcase our study that we conducted that was part of a greater research project. And the title is Cloud Computing Data Breaches, a review of US regulation and data breach application literature. So the presentation outline will consist of 5 main components. I'll be introducing the topic, especially data breaches in the current context. I'll review the cloud computing data breach literature. I will also review 3 cloud computing regulation and data breach application acts. And I'll be investigating 3 notable cloud data breach cases over a 6-year time frame. And as a result, I'll be outlining and discussing the social and technical as well as environmental implications and the road ahead, and what lays for corporations as well as a government. So why is this an important topic? Well, government and private enterprises are increasingly outsourcing the critical infrastructure, so processing and storage requirements. As a result, there has been a substantial increase in the amount of cybersecurity attacks, and as a result, data breach events have occurred. Now, why is this occurring? Well, insufficient social technical measures are being put in place, and that starts from the micro level all the way to the macro level. So outdated security architectures, so insufficient security that was placed by the organization or governments, unsuitable employee training programs, as well as inadequate cloud regulation. Now, from when a data breach occurs to when it gets notified, as well as the outcome of that particular case, there is a significant time which end users or consumers get to settle either financial settlements in the courts. So cloud computing data breach is defined as a breach that discloses end user or business data stored on the cloud service, regardless of the type of service that's being used. Hackers benefit from financial gain by retrieving those types of data and selling it on the dark web, so financial data, healthcare data, etc. Now, once again, this usually occurs because basic security defenses are bypassed, and that usually starts at the weakest link, which is usually the employee through social engineering attacks. Now, this results in computer network crime abuses and also delay in data breach reporting to affected stakeholders. So stakeholders such as end users, third-party providers, etc. Now, the disclosure of personal identifiable information, financial and healthcare data is usually the result of a data breach. Cloud computing regulation. Studies continuously focus on the environment and the regulatory aspect of data protection. There is an urgent need to have a unified and a federal approach. And we can see that even past technologies are not susceptible to data breach reporting, let alone emerging technologies. However, past technologies and the development status also serve as guides as future roadmaps. However, not all studies determine that cloud regulation is necessary. So one of the main outputs of cloud regulation or data protection regulation is that privacy and security should not be contemplated for loss of innovation. However, regulating emerging technologies is a challenging task for the entire cloud ecosystem. Now, in this context, the US data privacy regulations addressing data protection to point at gaps and loopholes. I reviewed 3 data protection regulations, the US Health Insurance Portability and Accountability Act and the Graham-Leach-Bailey Act. The Comprehensive Health and Financial Data Protection and they were implemented to safeguard against unsolicited financial information sharing. US Stored Communications Act, it was initially intended to expand the Fourth Amendment protection, however, insufficient for current technologies, let alone emerging technologies. One of the pitfalls with US data privacy regulation is that it's industry related and it's creating silos between the different types of industries. As a result of the silos, it's creating inconsistencies. Fisher 2016 was a pivotal study that they intended for a federal cloud regulation approval. However, out of all the studies, the continuous note was that failure to incorporate regulation within system design process with society, technology, and environmental needs. Now, the constant silos between different industry segments, it creates a band-aid fix approach, and stakeholders, including end users, are in no better position regarding their data protection status. Now we turn to data breach notifications. A key aspect of cloud computing data breaches is notifying the end user or the stakeholder that was ultimately impacted by the breach. However, once again, absence of a federal approach or federal data breach notification approach has encouraged companies to pass on the cost to consumers. Each US state has unique data breach notification laws. This not only creates confusion, but it creates inconsistencies in the way that reporting is processed and notified. Data breach notifications in context. Okay, so now we apply the notification law to a breach. And this usually happens to the users of the system. So the users of the cloud system, so the cloud ecosystem. Now, the main reporting processes are done through internal and external company notifications. So this can be done through press releases. However, it can also be done through local and national news media reporting. Now, in certain cases where the data breach affects global users, will then international news media coverage also come into effect. data breach notification laws, or DBN laws, are very difficult to understand and implement regarding of the business size. So small, medium, and large businesses often have to adhere to many state laws. One example is Equifax required to adhere to each state within the US. So knowing when to report a data breach and not to over-report is a consistent issue for many businesses as well as government entities. So the three data breach cases that I'll be outlining, the first one is the 2011 Sony PlayStation data breach. Now, why is this still important? Well, this was one of the first major cloud service data breach that occurred more than a decade ago. So the Sony Corporation shut down its gaming network and affected over 75 million users, which has closed their names, date of births, etc., as well as financial information. However, the pivotal component in this data breach is that Sony delayed its notification by 3 weeks. The main issue regarding the breach is that hackers exploited the human and technology errors or vulnerabilities within the cloud system. However, no long-term implications due to the disclosure of end user PI was discussed at that time. Now we turn to the second case study. So the 2015 Anthem healthcare data breach was one of the most significant healthcare data breaches at its time and still is. Over 80 million US customers or end users were affected, and they not only disclosed names and birthdays, but also social security numbers. So why are healthcare records so lucrative to cyber criminals? Well, they basically have higher value. The value in the black market is much greater compared to credit card information or even personal identifiable or PII. The culprit was the culprit of the data breach was that monitoring systems were slow to detect the intrusion. Customers were notified within 7 days. So while there was a delay, it was less than the same data breach. Now, the 2017 Equifax data breach was a significant breach and still is. Over 145 million customers and users had their PI as well as financial data disclosed. Most of the customers in this circumstance were not even aware that they were customers of Equifax. A combination of technology vulnerability, so outdated Apache Struts servers, as well as human errors, were the main culprit of the data breach. Equifax notified the end users several weeks after the initial discovery of that breach. And as a result, as a compensation, customers were offered free credit monitoring from Equifax themselves for a period of 12 months. So what have we learned about the implications of the outdated cloud regulation or the data protection regulation in general? So what we learned is that regulation has not kept up with technology, and this has been also known in previous studies. But this is known as the pacing problem. So it's a two-dimensional issue that Merchant describes. First, the legal frameworks remain static while the technology evolves, advances. And second, legal institutions inability to keep up with societal changes. Small and slow regulatory changes are often witnessed. However, they are very reactive in trying to solve the problem. So the requirement for a federal data breach notification. So while the study only investigated 3 data breach cases, it was evident that a federal data breach notification is necessary, and this often avoids confusion in stakeholder obligations. This also avoids criticism in data breach reporting. Inconsistencies of information disclosures to the various states within the US. Penalties also differ from state to state. Lack of individual and business accountability. So the importance of revisiting existing data breach cases is that we often forget that a significant amount of end users are impacted at the time, as well as information that often does not change. There's a continuous delay in data breach notification reporting, and tracking progress in privacy and security requirements. So what worked in the past might not work in the future, but then taking in changes that what hasn't worked in the past might work in the future. Consistently reinforcing the implications of data breach cases, so we can track changes that often occur. And the most important thing is that it provides a future roadmap for future regulation decisions. So government as well as business have the appropriate tools and information to predict how regulation can be in place for current technology as we see fit, as well as emerging technologies. So the final outcome is future regulation and data breach notification is necessary to protect end users within the cloud system. The environment plays an important factor in securing emerging technologies. However, out of the cases that we can see the complex nature of and interdependencies between the social, technical, and environmental systems. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Okay. Thank you very much, David.